Right, hello, guys. So before we get into today's episode, I just want to let you know that this week we are opening up enrollment for my signature program, the Online Summit Program. Now, specifically, we're looking for hikers who want to get strong, fit, and also as pain-free as possible so they can get out and conquer any adventure they set their mind to. Now, if that sounds like you and you're thinking, end of the year, I want to come and finish this off strong, get a really good spot for my hiking and start 2023 with a bang, I would absolutely love to hear from you. To find out more, all you have to do is go to summitstrength.com.au/apply. And on that page, you can find a time to chat with us and we can talk through things and really just see if and how this program may be right for you, your situation, and your hiking. So if you want to find out more, go to summitstrength.com.au/apply. You can find a link for that in the show notes below. Now, with all that being said, let's get into today's episode. And today we're talking about a topic that you would probably come across before. You've probably seen a bunch of times, and it may have put you in a bit of a tricky spot. And it's probably one of the more confusing topics out there in the world of hiking. So essentially, this is inspired by a recent post I saw in a Facebook group which is dedicated to climbing Kilimanjaro. Now, Kilimanjaro is one of these hikes which is a big bucket list adventure. So many people have dreamt of this particular hike. So many people have aspired to it. And it has this big range of different types of hikers who go for it. So there's, the typical hiker who they love hiking, they get out regularly, and that's something they've always wanted to do. There's the people who don't really hike, but it's been on their bucket list, and they haven't hiked in 10 years, 20 years, but they booked themselves on. They want to do it for their 40th or 50th or the 60th. There's just travelers who are like, you know what, I'm in another country in Africa. Kilimanjaro is just around the corner. Maybe I'll duck over and do that while I'm here. There's backpackers who are just sort of cruising around, and they're like, you know what, I'm here, why not? They don't even give it a second thought, and they try to climb up in, Dunlop Volleys or something silly like that. And there's so many different hikers that go out and attempt this type of hike. And in this particular post that inspired the episode today, someone was asking about training for Kilimanjaro. And they said they were really confused. And they wanted an honest answer because they said they've been getting some really conflicting ideas around all this. Some people have been saying, you know what, actually, it's a really tough adventure. It was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. You need to train. We did all this training. It was still incredibly difficult. And other people were saying, you know what, it wasn't actually that hard. It's all overhyped. We barely did any training. We got up to the top. And she was posting up. She was like, did you train for Kilimanjaro? Do you need to? I just don't understand how there can be such conflicting advice. And she was really confused. And then on top of that, to make things worse, all the comments on this post, last time I checked, there were probably about 100 of them. And it was the same thing. Half the people were saying, look, it's really easy. You don't need to worry. Half the people were saying it was really tough. Do some training. And it's just really confusing. And so the big question is, what's going on here? Because this is something you may come across, or you probably do come across all the time when you're trying to research certain hikes, when you're looking at hikes online or whatever it may be. And there's just always this conflicting stuff around if something's hard or not. And it can just be really overwhelming. So today I want to shine a little bit of a light on this. And I want to sort of explore this a little bit and just explain why there is such conflicting advice around these types of things, around the difficulty of hikes and this and that, and why getting advice from people who don't really know you is probably not a great idea. And, the simplest answer is everyone is different. Everyone has a different level of fitness and yada, yada, but it goes a little bit deeper than that. So here are 3 big reasons why it can be so confusing with this type of thing. And we're going to be talking about this Kilimanjaro specifically, but it applies to any other hike, the same sort of thing. So number 1, and the reason there is so much confusing advice, and when you look at certain hikes that seem really difficult, there's so many people saying it's actually not that hard. One of the biggest reasons for this is something called survivorship bias, which is a really interesting subject. And basically in the hiking context, what this means is we pretty much only ever hear, or the majority of people we actually talk to and hear from are the people who've actually succeeded, who survived on this hike, who got through. Alternatively, we probably never or very rarely hear from people who actually didn't succeed. Because people love to talk about their successes. Even more so, they love to talk about, if they've done something and they've just gotten through. Or maybe they've done something and they didn't prepare as hard as other people and they still got through. People love to talk about those types of things because it makes them feel really good. We've all done it. We all do it. And it's just something we all love to do. But very, very, very rarely do people like to talk about their failures. So for the people that go to Kili or go on another hike and they have to bail out halfway, they don't make the summit, they have an issue creep up, they get altitude sickness or any of these things, you do hear occasionally some stories, but it's very, very rare that you actually, that these people speak up. Because maybe they're a bit disappointed in themselves. Maybe they're a bit embarrassed. Maybe they sort of, trained really hard and they didn't get where they wanted to be. And it really sort of, rattles their self-confidence or whatever it is. And more often than not, we just hear from the people who've succeeded. And we don't hear from the people who haven't. So when you're looking at these tough hikes, you might hear all these stories of like, you know what? Yeah, we just got through, or it was really easy. And these are the people who love to talk about it. The minority is often the people who haven't made it. And as I sort of mentioned before, people love to talk, and they really sort of take over these conversations is when they haven't really prepared. Or maybe they've just scraped themselves through, but they still do it because that makes them feel even almost better than people who have taken their prep seriously, who have done their training. And they're like, I don't know why everyone thinks it's so difficult. We got through, we didn't do any training. And they love to take over the conversation. This shouldn't just muddy the waters. And there's no denying these people exist because, people can get through anything, by the skin of the teeth or get through anything without any prep. But we just don't hear those stories from people who haven't done so well. So that's number one. One of the reasons it's so confusing is survivorship bias. Now, number two, and it kind of piggybacks off that last bit I was saying, is a lot of people with these types of trips, they may succeed and they may get through things and they may love to talk about, you know what, we got through it. We didn't have to do so much training, or it wasn't super difficult, or maybe it was easier than we thought, or whatever it may be. But there's a lot of people like this who really just get through by the skin of their teeth, meaning they just really mentally grit themselves through. Maybe they're just at the limits of their physical endurance and they just push themselves through. And again, people love to talk about this. They love to sort of toot their own horn, and that's fair enough because, it's a pretty big achievement. But, and there is a big but with this, people in that type of situation, they may look back and be like, yeah, I succeeded on that. But they're probably not looking back and saying, you know what, I actually enjoyed that. They're probably not looking back and saying, you know what, I remember waking up each day feeling energized, excited. I remember going through my summit day feeling like super pumped to get through it. I remember just sort of, be able to chat with people going through. Because, there is a big difference between succeeding on a hike and finishing and getting to the end and actually being in that position to enjoy themselves. So you may be able to scrape yourself through without, really preparing or doing so much. But to actually be able to properly enjoy yourself, this once-in-a-lifetime experience where you're probably never going to go back again, and all this money, all this time and this effort you've spent to get here, there is a bit of a difference. So that's number two. As much as a lot of people say they've succeeded, they may not be aiming for the sort of outcome that a lot of other people are aiming for. They may not be really aiming, talking about having a good time. They might just be talking about succeeding. And then number three, and this often comes down to when people are talking about their successes, also when they're talking about their training and saying, hey, I just walked, or hey, I just did this or this and that. No one really ever talks or considers people with limitations. So most of the people talking about, hey, I just did some training, I just did some walking, I just did some hiking, maybe you go online, you read some articles about how to prep or whatever it may be. Most of those people and the advice that's tailored to those people are around people who they don't have any problems. They might just be unfit, or they might just not have hiked for a while. But in all honesty, they could really do a lot of things and get themselves in a good position. But when we're sort of thinking about people who may struggle with pain, maybe people who may have a history of injury, maybe people might have a limited history of hiking. They've never really done much hiking before. Maybe people who are really short on time and they don't have time to dedicate to lots of hikes in a week. Maybe people who are constantly traveling. Maybe they're traveling for work. Maybe they're traveling, in the back of a van before they head off, or whatever it may be. No one really ever talks about these particular situations. So there may be a lot of people out there who, they don't really have that much going on and they've succeeded. But if you're considering pain, injury, history, complicated lives, busy lives, whatever it may be, you know what? That's a bit of a different conversation. And I think for those three big reasons, there's probably a bunch more. That is why this can get really, really, really muddied when it comes to asking people, why is something difficult? Do I need to train or whatever it may be? So really my best advice here, when it comes to this type of thing, unless someone really intimately knows your situation, unless they know what you've been doing, what your history is, what type of hiker you like to do, and all of that, unless they intimately know your situation, then they're probably words aren't really worth listening to. So you're going online and asking people, is it difficult? Probably not worth listening to. Going onto articles online, probably not worth listening to. Going into a hiking store and asking people. Again, they may give you some good advice, but they might not really know your situation. My personal advice here is if you truly do believe that you won't need preparation or training, if that's I'm dead certain I'm going to get through this and it doesn't bother me if I'll be tired, I'll still get through it, then go for it. You do you, absolutely no problem. And fingers crossed it'll all be good. But in all honesty, if that's kind of what you believe, you're probably not listening to this podcast because you're probably not listening to a Training for Hiking podcast, in all honesty. But if you are concerned that it might be a challenge for you, whatever hike, whatever adventure may be coming up, if it is sort of, adding a little stress, a bit of uncertainty, then in all honesty, take your training seriously. Because best case scenario, you do all this training and then you get on the trail and you realize, you know what, this is much harder than I thought. And if I hadn't done this training, there's no way I would have been able to get through this. And in the end, it pays off. And you're like, boom, I'm so glad I did all that. That's best case scenario. Worst case scenario is you realize the trail is much, much, much easier than anticipated. And you're like, oh, this is a piece of cake. And you're like, you know what, in all honesty, I probably didn't need to do any training. But still, because you've done the training, you're probably in a really good shape. You're probably feeling really strong, really fit, and that will play out into other areas of your life. And that's never going to be a bad thing, in all honesty. So, I think that is pretty common sense. You probably know all this, in all honesty. I'm probably just preaching to the converted. But you know what? I felt like saying it because I was inspired by this post. Most people talking about these hikes, it's really, really confusing because there's so many different situations, so many different biases, so many different sort of considerations around all this. So in all honesty, if you're prepping for a big hike, you got something coming up and you're a little bit worried or you're a little bit concerned or you're a little bit uncertain, you know what? Take your training seriously. Simple, easy, make it happen. And, following on from that, if you were prepping for a big trip, if you're eyeing off Kilimanjaro, Everest Base Camp, a big hike, a big adventure, a big multi-day, a big through hike, or literally anything in the calendar, maybe a big overnighter, or literally anything like that, and you did want help to get yourself in a really, really good spot, so you can be confident you've been doing the right things, you're in a great position to not only succeed, but be in that position where you can properly enjoy this experience for what it should be, I really would love to hear from you. As I said at the start of this episode, this week I am doing a big enrollment for my signature program, the Online Summit Program. Now, we are looking for hikers who want to get strong and pain-free so they can conquer any adventure they want to set their mind to. If that sounds like something you want to learn a little bit more about, what I'd like you to do is go to summitstrength.com.au/apply. On that page, you'll be able to book a call with us. We can have a chat and really just see if and how this program may be right for you, your situation, and your hiking. So if you want to find out more, go to summitstrength.com.au/apply. There's a link for that in the show notes below, and we can take it from there. So thank you so much for listening today. Hope you've enjoyed it. Hope you got a bit out of it, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.